Is our inaugural Parenty video three-way. And in honor of World Breastfeeding Week, we decided that we are going to talk about all things breastfeeding. Yeah, so we're going to share all of our secrets around breastfeeding, the things we enjoyed, the things we hated, what the experience was for us, and all of that stuff. And hopefully you can be part of the conversation on our social media platforms.
So we're just going to chat about every mom's breastfeeding experience, which can be different, and that's okay. So the first question I'm going to ask today is to Lee. And Lee, how did you find breastfeeding? What was your experience, honestly?
Okay, yeah, well, honesty is my middle name. So it's a difficult one for me because my daughter was born prematurely and had health complications. So she was in NICU not for very long, but for 8 days, and so I wasn't able to uh, breastfeed on the breast. So I was pumping and expressing a lot, and then when I brought her home, I suffered from really bad postpartum. So bonding was a major issue, and being left alone with her in a room, especially at 3 o'clock at night, was horrifying to me. So I didn't really enjoy breastfeeding. It wasn't the best experience I've ever had in my life. As much as I wanted it to be this magical experience that moms talk about, that, oh, there's nothing better than 3 o'clock in the morning, just you and your baby, and you're staring into each other's eyes, and all of that. But I didn't get that. Uh, so, yeah, my experience of breastfeeding, I suppose I'm a bit ambivalent because part of me regrets that I wasn't able to have the experience that a lot of moms get to have, and the other part of me is like, well, it wasn't for me, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it.
Yeah, I think we all have this romantic notion of what the books tell us breastfeeding is going to be like, and when your experience is different, you feel thrown by it. You feel like, what have I done wrong? Why can I not have this romantic experience that every other mother had? And I think that puts us under a lot of pressure, and could actually, I think, lead to even a deeper postpartum because you just feel like you're not doing it the way everybody else says they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons I stopped. I only managed to do 4 weeks, and after 4 weeks, my milk had started to decline, um, and I think all of that was just because I was not in a good place, and you're kind of forcing your body to do something that your mind isn't aligned with. So we just decided that actually she's had 4 weeks of milk. She's thriving according to the doctors. So put her onto formula, and she continued thriving. So it wasn't like all of a sudden now she started going backwards in terms of her health because we put her onto formula. I think it was the better choice for us.
So I have a question again. Did you find that when you stopped breastfeeding, your postpartum started to maybe slowly dissipate? Like you started feeling a bit better, the stress was gone?
No, so I hoped it would. I thought I kind of put everything down to breastfeeding as being the reason that I was feeling the way I was feeling. Breastfeeding never really appealed to me. It always kind of freaked me out, the idea of breastfeeding. So I kind of thought, oh well, it's the reason I'm feeling like this is because I'm trying to breastfeed and it's not who I am or whatever. But it actually wasn't. I didn't really feel that much better. It was less stress, but it also meant that I was even more removed because now I didn't physically have to feed her. So now I could literally give her to anyone, which I did, give her to anyone to take care of, as long as I didn't have to have her.
Yeah, I hear you. Thanks, Lee. It's quite interesting to see how different everybody's perspectives are on breastfeeding. Karabo, how was your breastfeeding experience? Share that with us.
Interesting. We managed to establish quite a healthy relationship while I was still in the clinic after giving birth. So support in terms of being guided on how to get the right latch, because you said, there's this romanticized perspective of how breastfeeding is supposed to be, but it's actually harder than people kind of paint it out to be. So the concept of your body being able to produce food for your child is really beautiful and really magical, but just getting the right latch sounds like something that needs to happen quite naturally, but it actually doesn't. You need to be able to hold the baby correctly. You need to align your back correctly so that it doesn't get, too uncomfortable. The first time she latches, your uterus contracts. So it's like you're on like a really hectic period and you're getting these terrible period pains. And I had to get heat packs for a couple of days after I started breastfeeding. So that experience on its own was really daunting, man. It really was beautiful. We managed to get the right latch, so we established quite a healthy relationship from there on. It takes its toll physically on you, but I think I was just in the right space emotionally, like Lee said. If you're not in the kind of right emotional space, then your body doesn't produce as much as it needs to. So I had a good supply throughout just my breastfeeding journey. So it was quite an interesting thing. Sometimes you have no idea what you're doing, but getting the right support from the health professionals I was working with from the clinic was really great for me. So it was an interesting experience for us. She loved it. I loved it. It was a great bonding experience. That's why I was able to extend it for so long, because I exclusively breastfed until she started eating solids. I started eating solids, and then I still extended it after. So we only weaned off when she was about 20 months from the breast. So we were
Good job, sister.
we're definitely able to extend it, and we loved it until we didn't.
Yeah, I like that. We loved it until we didn't.
Yeah.
Like a love-hate relationship, isn't it? So I think for me, I have breastfed all my biological children, and my first experience was, I think, like you say, ignorant. You have this idea in your head of how it's meant to be, how you're meant to be doing it, but it just doesn't pan out that way. I remember sitting on the hospital bed, and this nurse came into the room, and she could obviously see that I was in a bit of stress, and she sat down next to me, and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feed my child. And she very kindly topped her up with formula that night. And the next morning, I kind of tried again, and it wasn't really working the way that I expected. And she walked in again, and I said, can you please top her up? And she just looked at me and she smiled and she said, no. She says, I'm going to help you. And she sat next to me, helped me hold the baby, like you were saying, Corrado, helped me hold my daughter. And she took my nipple in her hand, which was a foreign experience. And she showed me how to breastfeed Emily. She started latching a lot better after that. And when we went home, it was, I think, an easier process for me to breastfeed her. And I had so much milk. My boobs were like rocking it. There was so much milk. And it became a joyous experience until I got my first crack on my nipple. And that was just excruciating. And it got worse and worse and worse. And breastfeeding got more painful. And there was one particular night where I remember crying. I was sitting in the chair trying to feed her, and I was just bawling my eyes out. And I looked down at her, and her mouth was covered in blood, just because my nipples were so cracked and bleeding. And here's this little, week-old baby trying to suckle and get some milk out, and it was just the most excruciating thing I had ever experienced in my life. And luckily, I went to a doctor, and they sorted it out, and I carried on breastfeeding her until she was about 6 months. But it was not romantic. With my second child, it was much easier to breastfeed her. She just latched on and went for it like, it was all she could desire from morning to evening. I didn't have the rock hard boobs that I had with the first child, but it was easier. It was a nice process. I didn't breastfeed for as long because I had to go back to work when she was 4 months old. But no, it was, I think, the most comfortable experience of breastfeeding that I had. With the last one, I remember sitting in hospital in the States, and he was on my chest, and a lactation consultant came in, and she said, he's not eating enough. And I thought, okay, well, how do you know? He's 2 days old. And she said, well, let me help you. And I remember so vividly, she took off all his clothes and his nappy. She opened up my gown, put him on me. My husband was sitting there, and she tried to force him to feed, and he just didn't want to. And this baby was screaming. I was crying, and she just kept trying to force him to feed. And it was such an invasive experience for me. And then when he wouldn't stop crying, she just got up and she said, okay, well, I'll come back tomorrow. And she left me in a room with this 2-day-old baby. My husband was fuming. And I just didn't know what to do. And I think that kind of created like a mental block in my head for this kid doesn't want to feed. I was then in hospital. We went home and got back. I was taken back into hospital for high blood pressure, and I was placed on a magnesium drip days, and I wasn't allowed to eat anything. So I was trying to express for him, but my milk just got less and less and less. So that's when I started both formula feeding and breastfeeding where we could. So I guess every experience for me has been different, but no experience, I believe, is wrong. I just felt like that was the best that I could do at that time, and you just can't put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I think the matter-of-factness of nurses is sometimes reassuring and sometimes completely overwhelming. Like, because they see it every day, and they obviously are trying to help you. It's not like they're trying to, be malicious or whatever, but it's just, I even found like the nurses, the teaspoon massage to get the colostrum to come out, where I had bruises on my boobs. So because she was in NICU, I didn't have that initial breastfeeding where it gets your milk flowing.
Yes.
So they gave me this I don't know, I call it the Sucker 2000, but that's not what its official name was. But it was like those hospital grade pumps on wheels. Like literally I could run around the maternity ward pumping. But so to start though, what she did was she brought in a mug of boiling hot water and a teaspoon, and she massaged my boobs from the top to the tip to get the colostrum going, which it did. The colostrum blossomed as she was doing this. I mean, it was completely like, I don't know, I felt like as if I might be a dairy cow. But I had bruises on my boobs. That's how hard she was pushing with this damn freaking teaspoon. Like, I think I had like teaspoon-shaped bruises on my boobs for about 10 days after the assault.
And you said boiling hot water.
Well, no, that was to warm the teaspoon up. So she'd like put the teaspoon in the hot water, and then she'd collect the colostrum drops with the teaspoon, put that in a bottle, and then start the whole process again. It was about 45 minutes of torture. And there's no saying no to her. She was like, "This is happening, whether you like it or not. It's happening."
And I mean, also with your first baby, you're so ignorant. You just let everybody help you where they can. I think if somebody had to do that with my third child, I'd probably say, back the hell off. Like, you're not coming near my boobs.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have, Karaba, you can start. What is the most stupid advice you have ever been given? Like something maybe cultural or historical, with regards to breastfeeding?
I think one that just takes the cup for me is don't do it, but not for any other reason, but for the quality of my boobs. Like, no, don't do it. It's going to ruin your boobs. Like, they're going to be so saggy. Like, really? Really? I think we should have had the conversation before I felt pregnant. Like, don't have a baby because your boobs might get saggy. So that's just so mind-blowing, because I honestly respect people that decide not to do it because of whatever reasons, not even to establish that initial relationship from the get-go. But someone who's already seen me breastfeed and is like, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? Like, your boobs are gonna look so terrible. I'm like, it's okay, I'll get a bra, I'll get a boob job.
Nothing like an expensive push-up bra, right?
Yeah, it works every time. So I think that's just one of the worst things I've ever heard. And another thing that made me feel really bad is people always telling me, a lot of people actually telling me that she's not feeding enough. So people will tell me that the breast milk that I'm producing is not sufficient for her, and my baby wasn't a good sleeper at night, and we'd always be complaining about that, like, oh, I'm not getting enough sleep. Like, are you breastfeeding? Like, yeah, I am. That's why. That's why I'm sleeping, is because you're breastfeeding. So just give a little bit of porridge, or
How old was she when they said give her some porridge?
8 weeks, girl. Oh gosh, just a couple of weeks, and I was already being advised to give us a little bit, like a teaspoon. I'm like, no, it's okay.
No way.
Still starving, starving. And then the constipation story also, because she'd get constipated because people expect kids to poop every day, and that's not the reality of newborn life. And then people just tell me I need to top up my breast milk with water. So yeah, water, porridge, and don't breastfeed are the 3 things that I remember vividly that almost
Lee, what was yours?
Well, I suppose maybe I didn't do it for long enough to get too much bad advice, but I got a lactation consultant when we came home from a hospital. I got a lactation consultant who would come and do home visits. And she told me that I needed to graze consistently, and I always thought that word was super inappropriate because it made me then feel like a cow, literally grazing whilst producing this milk. And she ordered my husband around the whole time, saying, go and get her salmon and get her almonds, and she needs protein bars, and like literally she needs oil and protein and omegas and all these things. And she didn't remember our names, so it was always mommy and daddy. She called us mommy and daddy because she didn't. I'm assuming that because she didn't remember our names. But
did you pay?
Yes.
She should have remembered your name.
I think she has so many. She has so many clients that she goes from one to the next, and she can't keep track of who is who in the zoo. I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Mommy is my name.
Mommy and daddy works.
Mommy and dad works.
What's yours, Jackie?
Sure. I think for me, I was told to not sleep on my stomach because my boobs would get squashed and the milk would not produce. So there I was every night making sure I lie on my back so that the boobs could, replenish the milk every day.
That's terrible. The first thing I did after birth was sleep on my tummy because I just could not work.
You just want to lie on your stomach and cuddle up to that pillow. No, I was staring at the stars.
Well, I think that you must have been quite lucky that you were able to lie on your stomach, because my boobs were and probably are still so big, lying on my stomach is not an option.
Well, that's true, hey? Would have been uncomfortable. I'm not sure. Okay, so, sure. The best advice that you guys have ever been given with regards to breastfeeding. Best advice. Lee.
Oh, okay, so this is going to be one that's going to be hard for people to hear, but stop breastfeeding. That was the best advice I was ever given. The gynecologist at the time, who obviously was seeing that I was struggling with the postpartum, basically she just said, you don't have to carry on. You've done well. It's 4 weeks of doing it. The baby's doing well. You're not letting anyone down by stopping. And if it's going to help you feel better, then do it. So I suppose that was the best advice I got.
And I think it's so important to show that support to other moms, because there's such a stereotype that if you don't breastfeed, you're not really giving your child all those antibodies, all that those vitamins and minerals that they need, because formula doesn't have it. And I think we live in a day and age where the formulas that we do have are very healthy for our children. And we don't need to put moms under that pressure to make them feel like I failed. You know, you had a C-section, you failed. You didn't give birth naturally. What is natural? Let's use that word, you know? What is natural? You didn't breastfeed, you know, you failed. And I think moms are under too much pressure. Most of us have to run her households. Some of us work, some of us stay at home. Some of us have to bring in the money because we don't have partners. There is just so much pressure on moms in today's day and age to choose something. I'm not saying they shouldn't breastfeed. If they want to or they can, they should try like you did, but they don't feel like they should be pressurized.
Yeah.
Like your doctor said to you, you know what? Stop.
Yeah.
And that's probably, you're right. That's the best advice you could have ever been given.
Yeah. And I mean, you
Correct.
know, I'm obviously I'm not going to sit here and say that breast milk isn't the best food for a baby. I mean, we all understand that it is the best food, but the same way that when our children are older, we know that they should be eating X many vegetables and fruits a day, and we should limit sugar. But and yet they still sometimes will have a packet of flings for supper. It's okay, you know, like you do the best you can with what you have at your disposal, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, I agree. Karabo, what's yours?
My best advice is actually the opposite of what Lee does. You know, I was just advised to do it as long as I need to, and you know, I should always just always be in a position to get the signals from the baby, because then they also kind of tell you when they're ready to just let go. So I think that's the one thing, you know, just trusting that instinct and just having the confidence to prolong it as long as I wanted to, because I wanted to do it until she was 2, because that's the, you know, recommended age to get your child off breast milk, and that's the target that I set for myself. But I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. But I think at the point where we weaned off, then I felt like we both have had enough and we should just part ways. But I think that was just the best advice, because, like you said, there's so much pressures and people have very different opinions about breastfeeding and when you should stop. And by the time she was over a year, I was getting a lot of like parents side eyeing me, like, why are you breastfeeding that adult? Like, just stop it.
Does it have teething?
And you were like, yeah, it's fine. They do that, you know, it's okay. I live with it. So I just established that confidence in saying I want to do it for as long as I want to do it. And that was the best advice for me, because I got that initially to say, you do it for as long as you want to. And I trusted in that, believed in that, and I just ran with it.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to go, can I go off script a little bit?
Absolutely.
So
always.
I mean, I don't know what you guys, what your feelings were, or if you did it. I didn't do it. I didn't have the confidence to do it. But obviously, there's a lot of this sort of breastfeeding in public shaming that goes on, where, you know, sitting outside and breastfeeding or feeding your child, and now all of a sudden you're getting side eye or being asked to cover up or whatever. And even I think that relates even to the fact that when a child is older, it's like weird that people still breastfeed, because now boobs are like actually not meant for children of that age.
Yeah.
You know, because boobs are either for tiny babies or for sex. You know, like, so it's interesting, that whole vibe of you know, like, what are the taboos around breastfeeding? It's an interesting conversation, maybe for another video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But the breastfeeding public thing, just, it always got me every time, because I'd never had a problem with just whooping out my boob in public, and I could just see sometimes how people would cringe around me, and I could understand some don't like that, and it's okay. But for me, I'm like, this is the source of, you know, her food. I remember this one time I was chilling at China Mall and I was buying curtains with my husband, and all of a sudden she's crying for the boob. I put her on. There was a couple that passed us, and then they literally had to come back just to make sure, like, is that a boob? Like, I possibly judged, but at the time, like,
That is what that look, eh? It is what it is.
So yeah,
You can either let me feed her or she can scream for the next 2 hours. The choice is yours. Oh, golly. I think, you know, people mean well when they want to give you advice. I don't think 90% of people come to you maliciously. I think they come to you with good intentions. You know, this is what worked for me. Why don't you try it? But sometimes as a new mom, you're so overwhelmed by all the information. And especially, I mean, our good friend Google, you know, don't know how to do it, just Google it. There is so much information out there and it's overwhelming. And I think, again, people mean well, but sometimes it's good just to keep your mouth shut, you know, and, you know, it's rather just give her a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Well, that's another controversial topic, drinking coffee when breastfeeding, but oh well. So I feel like just make a cup of tea, rub her feet, you know. Buy her a bunch of flowers. Say to her, you've got this, Mom. Whatever position you're in, whatever you're feeding right now, if breastfeeding is working, if it's not if it's not working, just rather give support than comments sometimes. That's my opinion. Okay, so the last question for the day. What is your breastfeeding confession?
Don't start with me.
Start yourself. Actually, what is your breastfeeding confession?
My breastfeeding confession. He's got earphones in, so that's a good thing. My breastfeeding confession. So with the first breastfeeding experience, I absolutely loved the size. I loved it. I'd wake up in the morning and I had so much milk. They were like rock hard. Like they would almost hit my chin. And I just like, I felt like a superwoman. Like I could just put my cape on and start the day. Like I just really loved that feeling. And I can't explain it to you. Maybe it was a subconscious thing of feeling that I am producing enough milk, that I am doing something good for my child. But you know, you've got those little like blue veins that run over your boobs when they're so full. It was just the most incredible feeling for me. I just loved it. I felt like I could take on the world with my big boobs. When the baby latched, that letdown, that feeling of these full boobs just being used, you know, used to feed my child and to nourish my child. That was, I don't know if that's like a sick thing, guys.
No.
To like the way your boobs. Is it not sick? To be excited about these rock hard boobs. And yeah, my breastfeeding confession.
I'm like the total opposite because the rock hard was just so uncomfortable for me. I was like, just stop it. My confession, I just totally obsessed about breastfeeding. Like it was like I loved it a little too much. A little too much because I went back to work when she was 5 months and I continued pumping in the office and I just could not wait to go home and breastfeed. It would literally be the first thing I do, like just walking into the door and I just whoop it out. I just love the convenience of it. I think I also kind of spoiled her a little bit because then my boob became like her entertainment. If she's bored, boob time. If she, if she's crying, it was boob time. So it was just something that's really convenient for me because sometimes I'll just, because we co-sleeping, so sometimes I just sleep with both of them out. And I don't know how she'd like always find it during the night, like in the dark.
They have magic of smell. I remember that. Like, why even wear a shirt? Just go to bed topless. I mean, your partner will be happy, and your kid happy too. Like, one. Okay, Lee, what's your confession?
So I feel like I'm the black sheep in this conversation, but I suppose my confession is that and this is said with absolute love and no judgment, is I don't understand what any of what you guys are talking about. Like I don't relate to it at all. Like
Yeah.
you know, there's a part of me that said, yes, I want to do this. I'm sad that I can't do it. I wish I had managed to get it right or whatever. But that voice is quite quiet in my head, and if I listen to how you guys loved certain aspects of it, like I hated it. I literally hated it. Like it terrified me. It made me uncomfortable. It stressed me out. I hated all of it. Every bit of it. I hated it. So I suppose that's my confession is that, you know, I hated this thing that so many moms absolutely love. And I suppose that's a regret, is that I don't want to hate it because it is part of motherhood, but it is what it is.
But sorry.
No, carry on.
But I think this is why this conversation between the three of us is very important, because we've had different experiences and we've got, you know, different knowledge to contribute. I mean, Jackie out there that feel the way you feel, but don't want to say it because, you know, my gosh, I can't say I hate breastfeeding. What are people going to say? So
yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely.
Love it.
And I think the judgment that comes down on women who have different experiences, you know, did you breastfeed for 4 months? Oh, no, you should have breastfeed for 6. Did you breastfeed for 6 months? Oh, no, you should have breastfeed for 2 years. You didn't breastfeed? Why? Like, there's so many different, no matter how you breastfeed, how long you've breastfed, how you approach breastfeeding, somebody always has a comment.
Yeah.
And it's not acceptable. As a parent, as a mother, you do the best you can do for your child.
Yeah.
We're not denying that breast is probably the best food for a child, but it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah.
Life isn't black and white. There's always a gray in between. And this conversation proves that point. There's so many different experiences of breastfeeding, and not one needs to be judged.
Yeah.
No judgment. You know, we try, and that's the best that we can do for our children.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Perfect-ish, not perfect.
Perfect-ish.
True.
That's what right.
So everybody, thank you for joining Karabo, Lee, and myself on our little chat about breastfeeding for Breastfeeding Week. We'd love to hear your comments. Type them in the comment section, and we'll get back to you.